Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Tech Shift F9 podcast. I'm Maurizio, your host, and this is the podcast that talks about career transformations in the age of technology. We do that by interviewing amazing professionals about their career transitions, their career path, and learn some things from their own journeys. This week, I'm absolutely delighted about having Pascale Viala on my podcast. Pascale is Vice Dean and Director of the Corporate Office at the Schema Business School in France. She's an economist and a finance veteran with a long professional career in capital markets. She's a published author too, and a dear acquaintance of mine for many years. Pascale, welcome to the show. It's great having you here.
Thank you, Maurizio. It's a pleasure as well to be with you.
So, Pascale, let's dive right into it. You've had a long career in finance. I remember working with you many years ago, but you studied as an economist, and I guess it's a fairly natural career path to go into, from economics into finance. But I was wondering, what are some of the drivers for your initial career choices back in the day?
Well, as often, it's always a matter of opportunities and encounters with inspiring people, as well as the alignment, with the self during the trial and error process of initial career choices. I studied economics in the south of France, and I had the opportunity to do 2 summer internships at a French bank based in New York. There, I discovered the corporate finance world, the credit universe through commercial banking activities in New York, which was both fascinating and enriching experience to me. It led me to several things. First, I specialized into finance at the master level, as I wanted to analyze some aspect of the credit market for my master thesis. And I also met during that period amazing professors that drove me to investigate the research angle of finance. I therefore completed a PhD in finance at Groupe HEC, which is a major business school, well known for its expertise in finance. And I started my career as a university professor in Montreal. Research teaching are particularly enriching activities that I truly enjoy. They're long-term, nevertheless. And to a large extent, I realized after a few years that it was not compatible with my test for action. I missed connection to operations and market that I had a glimpse of during my internship. And as a result, after a few years, I joined the Chief Economist Department of EIB, which is a European multilateral institution based in Luxembourg. And later on, I joined Moody's in London for a couple of years.
I remember very well you at Moody's, and after Moody's, you switched to a financial insurance company. And so you went from essentially providing a service to investors and banks to actually taking on risk. So that could have been, I think, quite daunting and perhaps a little scary. And I was wondering, how did you approach it from a mindset perspective?
Well, in terms of career paths, being at a rating agency allowed me to grow very rapidly, both in terms of technical expertise and knowledge of deal making. Right? It was a point in time where financial markets were evolving in Europe, and it was also clear to me that it provided an interesting path toward both sell side and buy side. That's something I had in mind, when I joined Moody's, and it also allowed me to grow internally. So it was a very interesting move from my standpoint, and getting me closer to structured credit market, for which I had a very good interest already. A very key question I asked myself when I explored the next step after a couple of years was my own inclinations. And I had the desire to be at the heart of the game. That ties to your question of service as opposed to a buy-side role. And the alignment with my deep interest was, again, very important at the time of choice between several job opportunities that I had, with the risk-taking angle much more appealing to me. I could see in risk-taking, myself growing, spending the rest of my career. And it was not necessarily the case for the sales side, despite its richness. I guess I remain analytical, through my background in academics. Risk-taking was, however, very different from the world of the service industry, including at a financial insurer. For me, it requires, when I join, risk-taking, adjusting to what risk appetite means and what the investment or risk-taking profile of the institution was, beyond understanding risk underwriting, and also, how to develop infrastructure beyond identifying, proper investment or risk-taking opportunities.
And Pascale, specifically in that career move that you went through, but generally as a theme in all your steps, how did you approach sort of upskilling yourselves or getting into this new environment you were in from a sort of day one perspective?
Well, always different components, always a learning by doing component. For example, when I was at Moody's, I worked on my technical upskilling in several ways that included the appropriation of the environment, contribution to rating methodologies, participation to rating committees, their reviews, and the rating leadership. I also read a lot, and I leveraged my academic background to address new issues. That was, the first dimension. Another key one was always the exchange with other professionals, colleagues, but certainly sell-side and buy-side players that were either challenging approaches and opinion while at Moody's, and when I was in the risk-taking industry, our counsels, the arrangers, the investment managers we met and discussed with and evaluated, or the competition as well. They all, beyond helping me upscaling and growing, contributed to expand my network. Finally, and I think that is always important in a career, I had the chance to be mentored by senior people in several roles, and to get, as a result, important insight into the do's and don'ts and the how, which are essential to better grasp situation and how to advance and grow within an institution. Building such relationship always brings incredible value. I also worked, and that's something important, I guess, in all careers, but I also worked on my visibility and network through writing of yearly reviews and articles, when I was at Moody's, for example, participation to industry conferences, and through values representation roles. And that's always very important. For instance, when I was in the financial guarantee industry, I represented what we call the European end user at the ESDA Market Practice Committee for Credit Derivatives during the 2003 credit derivative definition negotiation. And it provided me with a unique opportunity to understand market liquidity issues and how you work collectively to address them, but also to understand, how to contribute the setting of best practices, and again, while enriching my network.
Well, that's wonderful. And I remember I might have challenged some of the discussions when you were at Moody's myself. So apologies if I caused any trouble.
I'm sure. And that's key.
But several years into your career, and my career too, there comes 2007 and then 2008. That was really like a double punch that knocked out a lot of our colleagues that time. And I'd like to know, how was that time period for you? And perhaps what lessons did you draw professionally, or even perhaps personally, from experiencing such an unprecedented market upheaval?
Well, to be frank, the period has been extremely complex for me. Indeed, to a large extent, the financial guarantee industry has been crushed early on, before all banks, heavily exposed to the security industry. That was linked to the business model of the financial guarantee business. And I lost my job. I lost years of deferred compensation. And I lost as well pretty much all the marketable expertise in finance I had by then, right? Even if my portfolio of risk underwritten performed very well through the financial crisis, to some extent, what I was doing was different from, the product that drove the financial crisis. I also lost my ideals as a professional, as to some extent, professionals maintaining the industry were often selected for having executed the poor deals that contributed to the global financial crisis to some extent. And of course, I understood it, but it's always difficult to go through that. They were better positioned to manage the consequence and the sales or exit from those deals. I did draw several lessons from this crunch. First and foremost, the importance and recurrence of bubbles and bursts, and the need to experience and eventually survive several cycles to become a very seasoned professional. Before that crisis, I went through the Asian crisis, late 90s, through the 2002 telecom crisis, and so on. But there is some luck in that survival, which is a very good lesson. And historically, these cycles have often been byproduct of the financial industry activities or its herding habits and hubris, and it provides rich lessons to be learned, although they're often forgotten. Today, they're probably the result of the technological and digital transformation we are experiencing, or a combination, finance and technology, if you think in terms of cryptocurrencies, for instance. But in any event, there's always another adventure ahead of us. So that's the first type of lessons I learned. But second, on a personal level, it really taught me resilience. I had to adjust. I had to rebuild a professional career to completely rethink the next phase of my professional life. Even if it was sometimes frightening or painful, the period has brought me an agile mindset that I never lost or regret. It is coping with change, all the change, including today's technological changes, and this is really very important. Finally, you ask professional and personal, and it really offered me the wonderful opportunity to bear and give birth to my second child. So balancing personal and professional life is key. And this unique period taught me that the best things can come out of difficult period or situations. I'm not sure I would have had that second child if I had, remained very active in capital markets, and that would have been an unbearable loss to me.
That's a great perspective, Pascale. And but after a few years since the global financial crisis, you moved into education. And can you tell us a bit how you engineered that and how it felt for you?
Sure. This move into higher education reflects both my background, right? I started as an academic, and my overall experience as, again, this seizing of opportunities. After the global financial crisis, I did some consulting work for a few years in credit, for rating agency, in insurance as well. And I always kept an interest in education. I also did some sharing of knowledge, experience, and best practices. Through my academic network, I therefore had the opportunity to come back into the higher education sector, but more into management, transformation, and change management role than in teaching and researching role, which really fit nicely with my own interest. So in my first transformation role, my mandate was to manage and transform all the pre-experience programs in finance of a French business school. So it allowed me to leverage not only my intimate knowledge of the academic world, but all my finance expertise, my network, and also the transversal competencies that I acquired through my career. As education is more of a retail activity, it also allows me to industrialize the delivery of quality programs for the benefit of the student experience beyond, the quality of training and its impact on students' placement. It was both interesting and rewarding, but after a few years and once, the programs hit top rankings, I decided to move on as I really missed the connections with companies and, this transaction component that you have in capital market. I also missed the very international component of the finance world and of my career. And I therefore joined Schema Business School, where, I'm now part of the executive committee in charge of the corporate office. The corporate office is the entry point to companies on the various acts of the school value proposition for them. And that includes executive education, which was a very young activity that that needed to be developed when I joined the school. Schema, in that respect, is a unique institution with 10 locations worldwide on 5 continents, and of which 8 campuses.
Pascale, you're doing great things at Schema, and but it is a different world compared to what you were used to prior in finance and capital markets. And I was just wondering, how different is it to work in academia, although it's still a commercial role, the one that you have, to the jobs that you had in the past?
That's a very good question. In order to answer that question, I need to cover 2 points. First, the academic world is indeed, very different from a finance role. It's academic, and in particular at Schema is a not-for-profit institution where everything that we do is reinvested in the school. It's very different in terms of the diversity of profiles involved, as we have permanent faculty heavily involved in research and helping advancing knowledge and training to a large extent. It's also a time which is a long time in academic, and it brings very rich experience, but it's very different from the finance world. At the same time, SMA is an international institution which has French roots. It was a result of the first merger of 2 business schools in France, and beyond being well positioned in rankings, it has a very unique DNA with innovation, globalization, digitalization, and transformation at its heart. So it's really different. At the same time, as highlighted by Schema itself, it has connections, especially at Schema, with what I did in the past through that international element and vision.
That's great. And Pascale, when people work in finance, and I often bring this up, we tend to be really focused on the sector that we cover, or we become highly specialized. But working in an academic setting, you really have to have a 360-degree view of the world and what's happening. So the question I have for you is, what are some of the ways and steps that you took to keep yourself up to date with the latest educational trends and development in executive education and business schools, and particularly about the impact of technology on education?
Sure. As in finance, in education, you really need to understand very well the functioning of the market you're in. For me, given my mandate, it was the functioning of the executive education market, which is highly competitive. It requires differentiation, based on the school strengths, and it requires as well a strong positioning of product. In going back to your question of how to keep up, with the latest educational trends and the impact of technology, it's important to remind that, with the COVID, our industry has also experienced a huge transformation of its environment as well. So I did a little bit the same that, I did in In the finance industry, you need to know your market by heart. You need to read. You need to exchange with client and all the various stakeholders. And as a result, I write papers and I investigate how the technology, could shape and change our activities. What is probably unique at Schema is that, with 10 locations worldwide, 8 campuses, we were already quite digital, before the COVID situation and the digital transformation, hit everyone in this world. So to a large extent, it's really keeping abreast of all those changes and trying to forecast, what are going to be the next innovation, being very attentive to what is going on in the tech industry. In particular, the educational tech industry is also, something important for us.
Speaking of technology, how do you use it for your own professional growth, or perhaps some examples of how you've integrated some of the latest technologies perhaps into your own learning, your own work?
That's again a very good question. What we do, if we think in terms of the executive education example, is helping companies, addressing transformation. And we do that, for instance, by developing, training that are relevant for them, whether it's about change management and transformation, or more clearly about the use of data science and AI for business. Helping the appropriation of AI for managers to understand, value creation, to understand how to build teams with data scientists, for instance, in them, and to understand, all the ethical and green IT issues that, everyone need to address today. So that's, one angle, through what we deliver as a way to facilitate companies' transformation. But it's not the only one, it's at the heart of everything that we do. Technology change pedagogy, change the way we reach out to client, and change the learning experience of participants. So we're working on all those dimensions. We are using technology as a way to develop and offer online experience to participants, or blended programs, for participants. And we use it as a way to rethink, completely the pedagogy of our activities. So, for instance, we have a global executive MBA program, which is quite unique, but also use the metaverse, right, as a way to provide pedagogical experience for participants in particular courses. This is one example, and of course, we do integrate the impact of AI in our courses as much as we can. It need to reflect today's environment.
Absolutely. And Pascale, I have one last question for you, if you don't mind. Looking ahead professionally, what's next for Pascale Viala?
What's next for me? I have to say I love the education world, but for me, what drives me is what already driven me when I was in capital market. It's developing, industrializing, so the growth mindset, and reaching out to new frontiers. So for me, at the end of the day, it's really helping developing our activities worldwide, especially in executive education, which is one of my mandate. I think it's a sufficiently exciting program in a very exciting institution as well, which is global, and again, it's quite unique. So that's a nice fit. I talked about alignment, and for me, this is my own alignment.
That's wonderful. Pascale, thank you so much for your time. Loved having you on the show, and I hope to have you back at some point.
Thank you very much, Maurizio.
Well, folks, that's all for this week. Stay cool, stay positive,